Well, thank you very much for joining us. We've heard a lot this morning about some of the challenges that racing is really facing, particularly from a betting point of view, where gambling on racing is in decline. The growth is in other sectors like sports, like gaming and so on. And the betting companies are becoming increasingly sophisticated in their customer segmentation strategies. So to start off, if we could all just address the question of to what extent there is still commonality between the racing and the betting customer. Can we start with you, Cheung?
Sure, I think there's a fair amount of commonality between the two of them. It's about the experience, though, and that's stuff that we've really got to work on and trying to develop. And we've focused a lot on events and trying to make that work and trying to make that experience a little bit more broad than what it is for a normal average day. And that's a difference, right? So going to the midweek cards is a much different experience from a player's standpoint than a big event day, and that is where the differentiator is for us. So trying to create more events where possible to try to make sure that the racing customer and the betting customer get together. And of course, our business is both, and we have to focus on both. We try to focus on the segmentation of the core customer and the new customer, and that new customer can also be a racing customer, but it's about, again, having an experience that makes sense for them and make them interested in that. And I think it has to be an all-inclusive approach for us to make it work.
Excellent. Richard, do you think we can better exploit those segments where commonalities do exist?
Yeah, for the case of Hong Kong, we actually do have a huge overlap. But one thing we do learn is if someone just go on track just with the mind of betting and not being able to appreciate the racing sports, that customer would not last very long, because then he or she can simply go across, in the case for Hong Kong, go to Macau for casinos, because we believe in the long run, the most loyal customers would be those who treat racing as a sport and a skilled game, really understand the thoroughbreds. They can spend 3 or 5 hours studying the form, the pedigree tree, looking at the barrier trial. This is actually the most ideal customer for us. So as a result, we do have a good overlap, and I think we should actually turn most betting customers also as a racing fan, and that would be the ultimate solution, I think.
And from Florence and Cyrille, I mean, when we look at specifically in France, are the racing authorities in France discussing a common approach to target both existing and potential customers?
Yes, because unlike Richard and Hong Kong Jockey Club, we are not a fully integrated organization. So we are in charge of betting, and the Horse Racing Association are in charge of the sport. So we started a new process, a joint process a few months ago to have one unique marketing approach and to define common segmentation. And more or less, we are not very far from what Richard showed us a few minutes ago. So it's very important for us. It's really new. We used to work a little bit separately, so I think it was a shame. So we are very happy to share this experience with our Horse Racing Association, with Equidia as well. So it's a fully integrated approach. It's still under process, but in a few weeks, I think we will finalize a document, a strategy, a clear positioning, and an action plan to address the different segmentation. New customers, for sure, but we try not to forget our current customer, because we strongly believe there is still a lot to do in terms of experience.
And Florence, how do you then work with the PMU to target those new customers? So through Equidia, bring new people into the sport?
We are working at now. Strategy has been changing for the past years, because when we split the two channels, we used to have one channel, and then we started real segmentation work in 2011, September, by bringing 2 different channels addressing 2 different types of viewers. One was really dedicated to race fans, and the other one was more largely targeted to the general public interested in horses. So our object is really horse. And the way we are working with PMU and with the overall horse institution in France is trying to use the horse object or subject to bring people, a larger public, because we know that in France 37 million people are interested in horses. So we're trying to get them talking to them about horses and saying, hey, look at what we are doing, and then bringing slowly on a program, we are working with data mining, with CRM, like everybody, I think, now, and bring them to horse tracks and to the betting industry. So it's a slow process, but we are really thinking as Equidia as a tool to win new audience for the institution and for the betting industry.
Thank you. And Richard, obviously you're involved in the media in the UK, which is a very different type of market. To what extent do we target different customer types for each element in the UK, or is there still a more integrated approach?
Well, I think as everybody knows, British racing is very fragmented. So trying to get a strategy together is always very difficult. I was actually pretty impressed when I in my 6 years in the UK, actually, the professionalism of a lot of the race courses and the industry. But trying to bring it together is always a challenge. The obvious one is obviously people are very peripheral and like to keep things to themselves, but I think that can be overcome. But data protection steps in quite a lot to stop people sharing, and it will take time. So someone has to have a long-term vision. But really, for us as an industry, we have a lucky position that we have a terrestrial broadcaster. Used to have two, we've brought it down to one. It is our shop window, and it is critical to getting racing out into the marketplace. On a average Saturday, we have about 750,000 people tuning in. Obviously, with a peak of about 8 million for the Grand National. For us, there's a dichotomy between, is it a betting show or is it entertainment? I think it probably went down the betting route, probably too much. And part of the new strategy is taking Channel 4 more into the entertainment. We also, as part of the deal with Channel 4, asked them to go beyond just the traditional 2 hours or 2.5 hours on a Saturday and do a lot more cross-promotion involving horse racing in their programming. I'm pleased to say they've just commissioned a cinematic release called Dark Horse, which is the story of the Welsh village that acquired a horse, and then the horse went on to win the Welsh Grand National. So those types of things are working very hard in those types of areas. So yeah, I think we're reasonably lucky and good in that.
Excellent, that's very interesting. And on that point, when it comes to entertainment and adding value to the whole experience, what's your view, Pat, in terms of what racing can do to innovate more in terms of content?
Well, certainly from our perspective at Trakus, the main goal is to provide the race viewer, whether that person is betting or not, with an absolute idea of where each horse is, or at least the majority of horses are, at any one given time in the race. That we can do all of these other things. We can bring people to the race course. We can enhance our television productions. We can get more people to see them. We can try to get more eyes on them. But if then we don't deliver with a very clear vision in the 1, 2, 2.5 minutes of the race itself, and give people an idea of what they're betting on, what they're watching, and being able to consistently follow that, then are we really delivering on the full experience? It's one thing to get people to the racetrack and to have a good time, but if the thrill is punctuated by the race itself, let's make sure that that race is as clear as it possibly can be. So from our product standpoint, it's making sure that people know what's going on as the race is actually happening. Then from a segmentation standpoint, it goes beyond that, and I'll show this later this afternoon, the average person watching the race is either a hardcore punter or someone who is at the races for the first time. And whether they're turning on to one of these networks, whether they find it on Channel 4 or Racing UK or Equidia, you don't know who you're reaching at any one given time, and that people are experiencing that product in different ways. If we can all agree that, number one, you need to be able to follow the race as clearly as possible, then I think a lot of other things fall away as not all that important. So if we're not presenting the product as well as we could, I think we lose track of kind of what the end result could be.
And obviously we've heard a lot about the innovation for the Hong Kong Jockey Club and the developments that you've been working on. What do you think the priority should be, Richard, in terms of developing new products and content for the future?
Yeah, for us, I think, as I mentioned, mobility putting things on mobile is definitely the broad direction. But we have constantly been trying to segment our UI, because we, in the club, used to only have one, for example, mobile betting app, which is essentially designed for the hardcore skilled punter. And what we found is that's good, but that's actually still looks as complicated as filling a paper ticket. So our direction is to not only segment the customer, but also segment the digital UI, the front end. Of course, the back end is still all the same technology, same data set, but segmenting the front end for different types of customers of different sophistication is very important. And then other areas we focus on would be real-time video, and we are also a user of Trakus, so thinking about how we can leverage the positioning data for more creative interface and experience is also important.
Absolutely, and I think from what we've heard this morning, the challenge is to try and make that more relevant and more personalized than ever before. So to what extent, Sean, from your perspective as well, is personalized marketing playing an increasingly important part?
It sure is. We've been focusing a lot on, again, the data and trying to segment our customers and so on. We've been trying different programs, and I think that's part of the effort here, is really to make sure that we're testing different things and try to see what works. We've been doing some things where we actually target certain customers, and based on their play the previous year, we give them a target of 25% higher or something like that, and if they reach that, they get 5% cash back or something to the like. That kind of thing has really proven to be very successful in that target. So we've tried a lot of different approaches like that, and really trying to develop that personalization, which is really that, I think someone had mentioned in one of the speakers, just that one-on-one conversation with customers is much more effective and I think much more lasting. And so having these tools, I guess, to be able to try to deal with customers in that fashion has really been effective for us.
And from your experience, Florence, in Equidia, do you think racing is changing fast enough to meet those customer expectations and demands?
Not really, not enough, because we are working with the social networks like Facebook, say. And when we see the expectations of these new people, they don't know anything about horse racing, and then we start to explain or to introduce the subject, then we soon have a problem, because what product do we have to push first? How can we help them to read correctly the races during a day? There are so many races in one day in France at the moment. This is really a challenge for a TV broadcaster to show more than a dozen, too many races. It's good for the business, but the problem we have is how we explain to new viewers what's happening and how we help them play with it, entertain with it, and be involved. So to answer the question, I'm afraid it's a bit long, but I'm not very convinced at the moment. But as Cyrille was saying, the overall panel is working on this, and hopefully we're going to find quick solutions, because the will is here. So.
Very good. And Cyrille, then following on from that, do you feel that there is real value to be generated from the investment that you're having in your customer relationship management systems? So to what extent are you able to measure that return on investment?
So as Florence mentioned this morning, it's very easy to measure the impact and the return on investment for our online business, account-based customers. So, and we definitely assess that there is a clear return on investment, which is something new now for us, is how to translate this experience to the retail channel, which is much more difficult. But we try to duplicate the same kind of approach. So how to push interactive marketing, how to push CRM management, but it's really something new. The good news is that now we have a strong experience from the offline world, from the online world. To me, we have built experience and expertise. We have in-source all our tools and expertise and skills. I think this is really crucial. If you want to move forward and to progress in the data mining and a big data story, you really need to have internal expertise. You cannot only work with external people. So I strongly believe that we have the key assets now to go in that direction.
And Richard, going back to the UK example, obviously we heard from Alexis this morning about the fact that Ladbrokes have a product agnostic approach, which obviously raises important questions for racing. How do we ensure that we can convert some of those other gamblers that are new to betting, whether it's in terms of gaming or on other sports? How do we convert them over into racing?
Jason, how long have you got? I think in the UK, obviously, we were very spoilt on the basis that horse racing was the foundation of betting. And therefore, we've traded off for that for a long time. Clearly, I think what we have to do is make it the most attractive product, make it entertaining, and I think we're doing that. If you speak to any CEO of any of the major bookmakers, not one of them is suggesting that horse racing will not be a very important part of their betting proposition. Even their retail stores and the online and offline play are very, very significant. So something like 86% of William Hill's online players will also go into a shop. So there's an awful lot of interaction. So, but again, for us, it's all about making it attractive. You know, we've all fessed up to the fact that number of runners is important. I think certainly the UK industry's got behind that, and we're looking at that, the quality of racing. Clearly, those issues have been dealt with. So I think it's about listening, but it is about delivering an entertainment product, and I think we work very hard at that, and probably more than anybody else. We will talk a little bit about that this afternoon. We've developed a whole load of a real platform that allows people to consume that product wherever they want in a simple manner and hopefully in an entertaining manner. That's sort of where we're coming from.
And that's a recurrent theme. Pat, we heard obviously from Jason about the way that the US Jockey Club have responded, because the sheer volume of racing means that it's very difficult to get any real cut through. So again, in terms of how you promote that to a new audience, where do you think the focus should be?
We're certainly in agreement that, you know, from full disclosure, Trakus has a blog on the America's Best Racing site. So, but it's funny that when it comes to data on an individual, on a micro basis, you never know when something interesting is going to appear. It's case by case. And we actually, I think, are in a fortunate position in America right now. Sometimes you can't really plan these things, but probably the best horse in America, the Antipost favorite for the Breeders' Cup Classic, is owned by one of America's top sports personalities, Jim Rome. And he won last week, did Shared Belief, the Awesome Again Stakes at Santa Anita. And he was 5 wide the trip in a 7 or 8 horse field. And immediately as the race was going on, I was at Belmont Park at the time, as the race was going, our Twitter blew up with how many extra feet did Shared Belief cover in this race. Like, you know, there were people throwing expletives on Twitter, you know, holy whatnot. We know the words, but, you know, how wide did he go? And within 90 seconds, I was responding from our account that Shared Belief had covered 66 feet more than the horse he beat by a half length, which was a horse that was drawn gate 1, ran on the inside the entire way. That equates to roughly 7 3/4 lengths. And never had more retweets, favorites, anything, and it included Jim Rome with more than 1 million followers on Twitter to say, you know, wow, what a performance from our horse, and just look at how good it was. The immediacy of reaction, and because it's in those big races, if Jim Rome had a conditions horse or a claimer in that particular day, there wouldn't be an interest. But when you have sports reporters from ESPN saying Jim Rome has the best horse in America right now, suddenly everything is magnified about not just the performance, but the analytics behind the performance. And so I think we've lucked out a little bit this year, California Chrome being a very compelling story in America, and now with a prominent sports personality having such a good horse at the time. So that we need to take advantage of every one of those elements, and I know America's Best Racing well, and I think they do a phenomenal job of doing it.
Well, thank you. That leads us very neatly on to set the scene for this afternoon's discussion on the first and the second screen. But before we break for lunch, are there any questions from the floor for our panelists? No, well, I think that leaves us just to wind up this morning's session by thanking all of our 6 panelists. Thank you for your time. That was a very interesting debate. We are now going to have a break for lunch.